Chabad, thank you, Hal. As you were talking, I was cutting out a paragraph here and there. Governor-elect, Mr. Benson, your good lady, Machazor, there were so many. Rabbeim, Mary, President Monica, and not least, Governor Reitinger, whom I understand had much to do with the beautiful fair which we are about to enjoy this evening, if this evening ever ends. So yes, I begin by expressing an admiring word to you, our chef, for what we are about to enjoy. I do mention in my book some of the dilemmas that a kosher eating diplomat, when he's on the road, he faces. He grabs every opportunity for a kosher bite. And in my book I write how working for prime ministers, indeed, Levi Eshkol, Golda Meir, Yitzhak Rabin, Shimon Peres, this sometimes, grabbing hold of a kosher meal could be a little problematic, since none of them were at all fussy about kashrut. So whenever there was an official banquet, say at the White House, I would seek out the housekeeper, her name was Mary Lou, who was familiar with my dietary needs, and such was the case. It was a night in 1975 when President Gerald Ford was hosting Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin in the White House State Dining Room, and the guests comprised the usual Georgetown elite and Jewish bigwigs and the New York glitterati and the like, all of whom were chomping on the succulent roasted pheasant, while I sat forlorn before an empty plate. My vegetarian dish had not arrived, perhaps because the place card on which my name had been engraved had been misspelled. Instead of Yehuda, it read Yehuda, Avner. Now, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Brown at the time, as I recall, who was sitting to my left, and who was flirting with Barbara Walters on my right, he caught sight of my still empty plate, and craning his neck to mark my name card, he called out, "Yehuda, you're not eating with us tonight." Whereupon, as if from pure butler, stepped forward and placed before me an extravaganza of colour consisting of a base of lettuce as thick as a Bible, which was topped by a mountain of diced fruits, and that was capped by a blob of cottage cheese, and it was all crowned by a scoop of whipped cream, so that the whole thingamajig stood about a foot high, and in contrast to everybody else's deep brown roasted pheasant, it glittered and sparkled like a flower, and Barbara Walters began to applaud. This attracted the attention of President Ford, who whispered something into Prime Minister Rabin's ear, and who in turn whispered something back into his ear, whereupon instantly the President rose. This is a true story. He held his glass high, and he called out to me for all to hear, "Happy birthday, young fella!" And then to the whole of the state dining room, he said, "Let's sing the song to our birthday boy." The entire hall rose to its feet and began chanting, "Happy birthday to Yehuda." After dinner, I asked Rabin, who didn't have much of a sense of humor, why on earth he had told the President it was my birthday. And he shot back in all earnestness, "What else? I should have told him the truth. And tomorrow there'll be a headline in the Israeli press that you ate kosher and I didn't. Then the religious parties will bolt the coalition, and I'll have a government crisis on my hands." Crazy. So, thank you for the bread we are about to eat. all. In my book, I have a scene in which a representative of President Jimmy Carter called on Prime Minister Menachem Begin, yes, my hero to heart, who was then on an official visit, the year was 77, to Washington. And he called on him in order to obtain his approval for the text of a joint communique that was about to be issued at the end of the presidential talks. One of the sentences read, and I shall quote, "The United States reaffirms Israel's inherent right to exist." Mr. Begin's response was to sharply say, "Please erase that sentence. I need no such favor from the United States. Our Hebrew Bible established that right millennia ago, and for that right, which has been sanctified in Jewish blood from generation to generation, we have paid a price unequaled in the annals of nations, so I need no American affirmation for our right to exist." Now the next well-meaning sentence read, "The United States recommits itself to Israel's survival." "Please delete that sentence too," said Begin. "Only we, the Jewish people, are responsible for our own Jewish state's survival, no one else." That, my friends, is the honest truth. It explains why, in part, that for all the alliance, the cherished alliance between ourselves and your great country, those of us who live in Israel and those of you who live here, though we live thousands of miles apart, whenever we come into each other's view, as we do tonight, we feel an instinctive sense of togetherness and a bond of kinship so resilient that they defy all erosions of time and all the distances of space. My friends, no people can live without its history. No people can live without its mystique. No state can remain healthy, can exist even, without its men and women feeling rooted to their land and who lead lives dedicated to their nation's well-being and who educate their children not to shirk difficulties but to overcome them, not to seek ease but to know how to wrest triumph from toil and risk, not to drivel in pop culture but to grow up in Jewish culture, in civilized culture, not to sink into lethargy but to stand tall in patriotism, not to be raptured by rap but inured by the sense and the sights and the sounds of the land to which they owe so much, to put oneself first all the time but to put the group first most of the time, not to wallow in materialism but to be enriched by the bounty of the Spirit, not to live by an anything-goes attitude but by a moral compass of responsibility, and not to be a slave to instant gratification but a servant to civic commitment. And all this I'm describing is the Hebrew Academy. Now, of course, the non-believers will say these are but words, slogans, flamboyant pontifications. In the case of our own people, every post-Zionist, every demagogue, every assimilationist will downgrade them to mockery and ridicule. How can they do otherwise when they were never taught to understand that the birth of Israel saved the Jewish people from appalling decline, if not oblivion, after the Holocaust? They never grasped the enormity of kibbutz galuyot, the ingathering of the exiles, the Jewish state's mission of national rescue, in liberating and in gathering and rehabilitating the millions of our downtrodden brethren in hostile lands. They never perceived that the new Jewish sovereignty would intuitively release a regenerative energy of renewal that would pulsate throughout the whole of the Jewish world, indeed the civilized world. They never comprehended that this rejuvenated state would build the infrastructure of the largest center of Jewish scholarship and culture in the world. And they never foresaw that for many Jews, perhaps a majority, their Jewish identity will be manifestly bound up with the fate of Israel. So I, as its representative, say, we stand here today, as we've so often stood before, on this Hanukkah Eve, on the one hand, yes, powerful and intrepid, and on the other, small and vulnerable, the few against the many. For sure, time and again we've been attacked and threatened with destruction. What other state in the world is threatened with actual destruction? Time and again we have floundered and stumbled and been bled, yet time and again we have with Siyata Dishmaya, with the help of the Almighty, we've weathered every storm, overcome every hurdle, withstood every test, and at the end of the day emerged stronger than we were before. Now, given what is happening in our region of the world, which is in such tumult, I am often asked, the way things are going, where will this all lead to? What's our future? My year? Essentially, I would have to tell you in all honesty, I don't know. And you know what? We have never known. Many an American who has a measure of certainty about his or her future will assuredly find this hard to understand. To understand the capacity of a nation to live with the unknown. Yet open your Jewish history books and you will see that the essence of all our history, ever since God commanded Abraham to set out for the unknown, the essence of our history has been the capacity to live with the unknown. The entire venture of Israel has been achieved only by jumping into the unknown. In no case, under no circumstance, at no period to no Israeli Prime Minister has the future been clear and known. So the question arises, how to cope with these unknowns. How, for example, does one live in America as a practicing Jew in the public domain in a world without walls? We all know the statistics of Jewish assimilation and attrition. The irony is, we Jews have always known how to survive persecution. It's something we've been doing for centuries. But do we know how to balance the freedom of the public square with the awareness of being creatively Jewish and communicating that love to our children as this house of learning is doing day by day? So, I humbly offer you my latter-day version of 10 Commandments to cope with the unknowns of our time. 1. When an enemy of our people says he seeks to destroy us, believe him. 2. Stand tall in the knowledge that every tyrant in history who has ever sought our destruction has himself been destroyed. 3. Be forever loyal to the historic truth that Israel is the nation state of the Jewish people and Jerusalem its eternal capital. 4. Protect Jewish dignity and honor at all costs. Indeed, the dignity and honor of every human being. Life is holy, but there are times when one must risk life for the sake of life itself. 5. Never raise a hand against a fellow Jew, no matter the provocation. 6. Give our enemies no quarter in demolishing their malicious propaganda. And 7. Whenever a threat against a fellow Jew looms, indeed against a fellow human being looms, do all in your power to come to his aid, whatever the sacrifice. 8. Never pause to wonder what others will think or say. 9, love peace, but love freedom more. 10, which is really number 1, be proud Jews, not by the accident of birth, but by deep and proud conviction, rooted in our eternal heritage and faith. Now I know full well that there are many committed Jews in this country, Zionists even, who are often critical of Israel's policies and are getting fed up, are getting weary of constantly having to defend Israel's actions in face of an often hostile media and a souring public mood, not least on your campuses. Well,